Hello, everybody. My internet is acting a fool today. So I don't know if you can hear me. I'm going in and out. I'm Candace from Tony News. I'm really excited. It's a poetry event this evening with the Never Ending Workshop, and I'm going to let Annie do most of the talking since my internet is on the fits, but I'm happy to be here.
Hi, friends. I'm Annie Carl with the Never Ending Bookshop. I am co-hosting this event with the wonderful Candace from Tubby and Coos, and we are very thrilled that you're here. And we have, right now, we have 3 poets who are very excited to share their work with you, and we're hoping for a 4th who is also having some internet issues. So stay tuned. We're going to start with Reagan. Reagan Petruch is a poet from, let me bring it. Writes, edits, and consults creatively and professionally. Her chapbook, An Animal and I Can't Name, won the 2015 Two Cups of Press competition. Her debut poetry collection, Head of a Gorgon, is forthcoming with Vegetarian Alcoholic Press in 2022. Let's welcome Reagan.
I love that, Vegetarian Alcoholic Press. That's awesome.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you to MP for letting me tag along to the other readers tonight, and of course, everybody who's joining in. So I'm going to start with a poem that is a little bit lighter. All my poems are heavy, so just keep that in mind. But the trigger warnings don't apply to this first one. They just apply to the second 2. So if you are sensitive to issues of sexual violence and trauma, you may want to mute during that point in time. At the very end, I'll be reading from a book, one last poem, and I will signal with the book, and that'll be a visual cue that you can come back. The second 2 poems are from my forthcoming collection, Head of a Gorgon, which is about Medusa, hence why some of the sexual violent components come in. So with that, I am going to start with What Happens to a Place. The sky appears white in the picture of Illinois, no matter how blue it was that day you stood in the field of the farm you grew up on. You remember how, in your youth, you'd mow around the barn that hovered red and whole over corn rows. This was before your BB gun, before you shot the gauges off the tractor, before you left. There were animals you'd throw rocks at, a creek you'd kick up with your feet. Now there's just your uncle, who stands by the bonfire he made for no reason, from overgrown tree branches, rotted wood from the silo. We sift our way through waist-tall grass. It slumps beneath us, then rights itself, as if we'd never passed. We hear humming and wonder what rules the ground, but it speaks in a code we don't understand now that your uncle no longer tames it. We're startled by a noise from the barn, then realize another plank dove from the roof onto the broken plow. We hear its brief sigh, recognized as nothing that craves human caring. Okay, so here's the second poem, Seeing Stars. As a child, I learned this trick, pressed fingertips to closed eyelids, made the stars appear. When I opened my eyes, blurred darkness. Who's there? I couldn't speak what I feared most, believing speaking made real, summoned things into being again. First grade amnesiac, late night TV's snowy stars sizzling, hoping light would scare anything waiting in darkness to prey. Yearning to learn the right kind of kiss, a blazing in my chest, a whole universe I could spin, hold in like my breath until my dizzy head, love drunk, could overwrite the past hissing in my skull. But as swiftly as the moon across the sky, each he saw me, gaped at the trails my stars had marked me with, and fled. No wonder no boy will love you. Look at you. You don't listen, she said. Then mother's knuckly yanks raked the lengths of my hair, fingers treading neck, nails puncturing flesh. But no matter how bright, stars are always quiet. Couldn't save me from falling numb. Reminded me, cloak my words, left me dumb. There's nothing extraordinary about housing stars, silence, tragedies adorning the engulfing night. To think people strive to learn their names, care about naming them, always waiting for their stupid, distant light to reach, as if that touch is kind. Just speaking of them sets them in their searing motion, and from there, no escape from their twisted elliptical fates. Listen, I'm carving a new star in this darkening skin. I create it as easily as I say the words. I search for some hero, some Orion without a loose belt who will sing the lullaby that can put me to sleep, who can sing the song that brings me back to dream. But can he exist without all those rivets of stars? Who's there, still waiting for the night to rise? And this poem's called Raven Father. You didn't make me raven, Father, unkindness did. You didn't see who split your girl too soon from the shell, couldn't hear the shivers of downless skin. You only ever saw me after, these dark-hinged wings. A double life already begun. One father, two masters, but sentry, I've had none. I was so happy you sat with me, Father, in the hospital. Diagnosis? Half raven with two brains raining my head, flapping and falling backwards through memory, finding only endless twisted slacks. Half raven with black breast cracked open, blue tumor beating back forth back behind viperous ribs. Unkindness, it seems, runs in this blood. Halves foreign to each other struggle to fit, incurably different. You asked me what I saw in my reflection once, Father, not knowing the tenor of your question. When I'd perched before a surface, I'd mostly noticed shadows, what stuck with things beneath a shined light. You said, you can tell me anything. I'd waited 2 lifetimes for any man's kindness to reach me, and I returned it, tucked words no bird should ever know under tongue. Fledglings can't be heroes, Father. The small don't dare spring with unversed wings. They recite terms they've heard but can't grasp, rattles demanding salvation, deliver us from. How swiftly a flock of unkindness will wizen us. Then we pray for age or an end, invent reticent melodies, peck and peck at our binding ties. You'd be so proud now, this sharp beak of mine. Split for collision, my halves now collaborate, fray unkindness's grip like scissors. Father, sometimes I saw your black pain flapping, but birds can never remain in sky. Why should I name who happened? Could that ever measure their infinite unkindness? Let me share these notes instead. Forgive what I've hidden in this odd soldered shell. Trust the blind flight alongside shadows I must shepherd. Your daughter's a crux, but recovered from the squall, resolved, shaping a haven with these pitchy songs. Okay, so I'm going to end now. Here's the signal, in case you needed to break away. This is Borrowed Love Poems from John Yao, and I'm going to read the last poem, the title poem, which is also about the sky. So the theme, of course, of the evening is based on MP's Sky chapbook. So I'm guessing that this line might haunt you as much as it haunts me when you hear the repetitive line about the sky. This is called Borrowed Love Poems. 1. What can I do? I have dreamed of you so much. What can I do, lost as I am in the sky? What can I do? Now that all the doors and windows are open, I will whisper this in your ear, as if it were a rough draft, something I scribbled on a napkin. I've dreamed of you so much, there is no time left to write, no time left on the sundial for my shadow to fall back to the earth, lost as I am in the sky. 2. What can I do, all the years that we talked and I was afraid to want more? What can I do now that these hours belong to neither you nor me? Lost as I am in the sky, what can I do now that I cannot find the words I need when your hair is mine? Now that there is no time to sleep, now that your name is not enough. 3. What can I do if a red meteor wakes the earth and the color of robbery is in the air? Now that I dream of you so much, my lips are like clouds drifting above the shadow of one who is asleep. Now that the moon is enthralled with a wall, what can I do if one of us is lying on the earth and the other is lost in the sky? 4. What can I do, lost as I am in the wind and lightning that surrounds you? What can I do now that my tears are rising towards the sky only to fall back into the sea again? What can I do now that this page is wet, now that this pen is empty? 5. What can I do now that the sky has shut its iron door and bolted clouds to the back of the moon? Now that the wind has diverted the ocean's attention, now that a red meteor has plunged into the lake, now that I am awake, now that you have closed the book. 6. Now that the sky is green and the air is red with rain, I never stood in the shadow of pyramids. I never walked from village to village in search of fragments that had fallen to earth in another age. What can I do now that we have collided on a cloudless night and sparks rise from the bottom of 1,000 lakes? 7. To some, the winter sky is a blue peach teeming with worms, and the clouds are growing thick with sour milk. What can I do now that the fat black sea is seething, now that I have refused to return my borrowed dust to the butterflies, their wings full of yellow flower? 8. What can I do? I never believed happiness could be premeditated. What can I do, having argued with the obedient world that language will infiltrate its walls? What can I do now that I have sent you a necklace of dried, dead bees, and now that I want to be like that necklace and turn flowers into red candles pouring from the sun? 9. What can I do now that I have spent my life studying the physics of goodbye, every velocity and particle and all the waves undulating through the relapse of a moment's vision? Now that I must surrender this violin to the sea's foaming black tongue? Now that January is almost here and I have started celebrating a completely different life? 10. Now that the 7 wonders of the night have been stolen by history, now that the sky is lost and the stars have slipped into a book, now that the moon is boiling like the blood where it swims, now that there are no blossoms left to glue to the sky, what can I do? I who never invented anything and who dreamed of you so much. I was amazed to discover the claw marks of those who preceded us across this burning floor. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Reagan. That was pretty incredible. Thank you very much. Just a reminder for those of you who are watching our live stream right now, you can post questions in the comments, and Candace and I are following that. And there's going to be a Q&A at the end of our poet presentation today. Next up, we have Samantha Sam Thane. Is a poet from Indiana. Her chapbooks Coughing Up Planets and Sad Horse Music debuted in this year, 2021, with Vegetarian Alcoholic Press and The Daily Drunk. Find her at SMN, the THFN. All right, Sam, you're up.
Awesome. Thank you for the introduction, and thanks, Reagan. That was really beautiful to hear, and I'm so glad I got to hear you read, considering like we're on the same press. It's very cool. So yeah, keeping with the sky theme, I've just got a few poems from both of my books and then some stuff I'm working on to read. So the couple of ones are from my chapbook Coughing Up Planets, which debuted with Vegetarian Alcoholic Press. The first one is called After the International Astronomical Union, which is a reference to the day Pluto was like demoted from planethood. After the International Astronomical Union, 2006. My mother chops the rot out of tomatoes and tells me I am beautiful as I am. On the news, scientists demote Pluto from the planets. Not giant enough. Not heavy enough to demolish the debris that cross her orbit. A shame, my mother says. She cooks while I imagine tomatoes with bones. Orange ones, heartbeatless, red ones that howl, I'm scared, sunspots that bleed black from her raging blade. I am beautiful only in light that eclipses my face so you cannot see my craters. My mother chops the rot out of tomatoes and I orbit. She cooks. Scientists erode Pluto with math and size. I belt my stomach shut to make an asteroid enough. Who preserves the fat and the small? Who lets us live? My mother chops debris out of tomatoes. I moon around her, too heavy. I howl. My mother chops. demolishes, spirals. I am scared of what is enough. This next piece is another spacey piece with an epigraph from the Mars rover that passed away a while ago. Opportunity. The death of opportunity. My battery is low and it's getting dark. A quote from Opportunity. The Mars rover had died. I had lost my Valentine by choice. I cried over everything. Cemented bumblebees, spilled soda, dead machines. There were terrible things. Rusty flowers, radio static, that ugly numbness, my uncared for body. At least men tell me I'm pretty. At least there's always someone to kiss, even though there's no feeling to the touch. Opportunity was made of World Trade Center metal, which proves how gods grow, how wreckage spurns rebirth. So I believe in second launches. So I swipe on strangers. I ask my dates questions. How are you? What do you do? What's wrong with me? They stay silent and remake me worse and worse. Butterfly mouth, they suck all of me out. After all that roving, there must be some unearthed minerals missing the mystery. Mars wailing at Opportunity's tongue on its floor. Maybe the planet doesn't want to be explored. The news said a dust storm killed Opportunity, but I bet on loneliness. Something about zeitgeist and rarity, or singularity, or another refrigerator word. I broke up with her because I didn't love her anymore. The cruelty was the stain. The year I spent half in love with leaving. Once you are alone, what do you do after? Do you learn to live quiet and solar, eating only sun like a good machine? Do you learn to love winter? Is there an after at all? Opportunity radioed so much static as it passed. I imagine the snap, crackle, pop, the sudden stop, nothing left to say. I could never survive in space. All that pinging your God again and again. This next one is called Green Light. I just have to find it in the book. Green light. The light was red, but I said it was green because I wanted to see the alternate universe where I was dizzy and starred. I wanted sirens to scream for me. My mother drove off, stopped, said shit, said we could have been killed, said what the hell is wrong with you? I am kaleidoscopic, broken light but beautiful. I started the engine in the garage with all the doors closed. I'm unsure if it was an accident. I was fading as particles in parts of cosmos I can't see. I was coughing up planets for 3 hours. I was telling my mother, I love you, forgive me. I was tilted. I was spinning the wrong way. I have one poem to read from my other chapbook that is sky adjacent. It's called Sonnet for BoJack Horseman. If you've followed this project or like heard about it at all, it's just a bunch of poems like about BoJack Horseman. But this one plays a lot with space and the sky a lot. So Sonnet for BoJack Horseman. So much of us is lost to the dark. Blame cosmic forces at play, planets in retrograde because no one would be washed up if they could help it. No one would shatter glass on purpose, right? What even is forgiveness? A bad moon phasing, a sunflower in bloom, not knowing where to gaze. There are places for people like us, but we can't all fit on one spaceship. Besides, who would shepherd? We unfold like enzymes, irrevocably damaged, motorcycling without helmets just to see who stops us. The horrifying truth. We fuck up and people still love us. We could nudge them off water towers and convince them they slipped. Either way, they'd thank us for one last good look of the city. And I have one last poem that I've been working on recently, and I'm very excited to share it with you. Thank you all for having me. I really appreciate it. Thank you, MP, especially for inviting me, and I'm very excited for your book to come out. This poem, I think its relation to the sky theme is very prominent, because I think the sky is a circle. So here is my poem, For the Circles Who Shaped Me. I have seen so many shapes, V's of angels, street choirs of geese, branched roads and nettled square trees. Yet predictably, I always return to the circle. And I must say, I see its roundness as a sort of resilience, how it permeates like ivy all around me, a natural swaddling. I am fond of its perseverance, though I won't expand on it, but I believe that all good things are round, and if they are not round, they are missing a piece, as Silverstein would say. Just think, pies, heads of bells, sound itself, of course music is curved. Aren't we just wheeling air into song when we sing? Even pumpkins wrought out a whole magic, sometimes sad, but it's true, their greatness, an orange ring, globular, orbiting my feet like you, my son. Obviously, I'm here to tackle nothing. A circle is a sphere, perhaps, or not. Math doesn't matter here, I'm feeling. Listen, I can't tell the difference between winters and my acute sorrow, but I know circles are springtime, are buds. To bloom is to open, to wait for a wound, but widen anyway, because there's nothing to fear in the form. It's fearless, the space, unbolted, free. Don't you ever wish you were a licking? The honey glaze of friendship over a warm letter, asking how you've been these days without me. Now that you're back, I can say with sweet ease, you make me a well of myself. I mean deep. I mean, there is no one I would rather trace fathoms for until I'm greasing need. And I love you for it. I love how we return to each other again and again, our serendipitous circularity. My bursting milk teeth, look at your nearest biscuit and see how there is an inside and an outside of the circle, but no corners to hide behind. A circle is a valley of hot butter and glitter. Shimmer with me for a minute, my love lusters, whom I have gathered here today to ask for your hand in lifelong coalescence. Yes, we come together forever and ever and never stop. And imagine how lovely our lives would be if we believed we could fold ourselves into more. The circles, trenches, this full emptiness, a puddling of its soft core. Now I can say with total circularity, I love you. If I plotted us out on charts, of course I'd see glow in the dark stars. I'd press our diagrams together so hard until we merged into one. I love you, and I'm not undone by desire. This love makes me entirely. Thank you.
That was so good, Sam. I love horseman poetry. That's a
Yeah, thanks, Sam. That was awesome. I really like that there was poetry based on BoJack Horseman. That makes me super, super happy also. All right, our final poet today, and the person we're here to celebrate is MP Armstrong. Woohoo!
Woo!
Is a disabled queer writer from Ohio studying English and history at Kent State University. Their work appears or is forthcoming in Perhappened, Prismatica magazine, and Homonen journal. I think I pronounced that correctly, among others. And their debut chapbook, Who Lives Like This for a Cheap Price, is published by Flower Press 2021. Find them online at MPA Rights and mparights.com. All right, MP, it's all yours.
Hooray! I'm so excited to hear your poetry. Congratulations on your new book.
Yes! Yes.
Thank you so much, and really thank you both for providing this virtual space. I'm really excited to read tonight, and thank you as well to Reagan and Sam for being here. This is my second chapbook to come out in a pandemic, which has been really hard in a lot of ways, but it is really exciting that these kind of events can happen with people from all across the country. So I'm going to read a couple of poems from my new book, which I have right here, The Truth About the Sky, which is out now from Selkirk Station. So I'm going to start with Luna Malata. We notice as soon as we step outside. The Virgin Mary is missing from the sky, tucked behind a cover of clouds like a Florentine fresco behind a gilded screen, waiting until the parishioners need her. Though tonight the Florentines, the New Yorkers, all the souls on earth likely need a horde of golden haloed Madonnas in glory, more than toilet paper, more than any other saint, or even Jesus himself. But she seems overwhelmed, unable to watch. She wasn't supposed to be the one tasked with saving us. We don't mind, though. We understand. And we weren't here to pray to her anyway. We heard you can pray directly to God these days. Desperate times and everything. Though we wonder how much sway even God has over a molecular enemy, a perpetual Lazarus. And when the clouds open, we have to wonder, are these someone's tears or just raindrops? Are we damp with sadness or simply wishing that the atmosphere could feel what we do, the weight of the apocalypse coming down? And still we couldn't find the moon. Great. Next, I'm going to read Inventory of What Falls Apart. The moon, cleaving open like a walnut. The crack ever expanding, the scientists baffled. The tiny granules like confetti dancing into the atmosphere, partnering with the remnants of Halley's Comet. Hurtling diamonds, gas trails like green onions. Earth passes through the debris stream. Earth spins, surrounded by chunks of the universe that tumble to the surface in sci-fi movies, rifting the soil with each heavy slam. In reality, Earth is made from its own broken pieces already. Doesn't need any more. Something breaks every day, regardless. Piñatas bleed candy at children's birthday parties. Glasses smash into glittering grit on kitchen floors. Bones. Snowballs crumble like empires on the windows where we used to live. That makes it sound as if we lived in the windows themselves, just sheer faces trapped between two panes of glass. If you'd only ever seen us from the outside, you might think that too. We never did manage to shatter the glass. We have never been cleavers, only shards, only space. Next, my next poem is Ode to the Mini-Moon. Here's the thing about the mini-moon. She escapes us. By the time we hear about her, she is already strolling away in relaxed circles, tracing a slow, safe voyage to other unknowns. Instead, we resort to reading about her effervescent glow starked into the plain white of computer screens. Only the second time in known history. On the verge of a new era in mini-moon discovery. Leisurely rotations every 3 minutes. The size of a couch. We long to sink into her with a bag of potato chips and a Diet Coke, watch a movie and fall asleep, shedding the weight of the galaxy between her craters like lost coins. We won't miss them, and she won't mind them any more than the big leather sofa in your living room does. Here's what none of the articles mention about the mini-moon. Our burden doesn't scare her. This departure from our orbit isn't about fleeing. It's more like when you were a kid and your mom cracked the bedroom door open to see if you were okay. Golden light of the hallway, carving a tunnel into the bluish dark of your bedroom. Brief, but saturated with the desperate desire to hear your breath, which is to say love. And even when the door closes behind her with a muted click, you're left with a nightlight. All right, and the last poem I'm going to read is called What I Can't See. I write a lot of poems about what I can't see. Like the stars, sometimes. Here in Northeast Ohio, clouds blot out the sky like a nightly undulating Rorschach test. And even when constellations do appear, like Polaroid photos coming out of the pale mist, some of the pinpoints we see are corpses or newborn babies. It's hard to tell which is another thing I write about but can't see. The past and future pushing to claim space, or uncertainty, or human corpses and newborns. I write about them anyway, like I write about my friends, all looking at the sky and forming their own constellation of upturned faces. Like I write my family and the president and God into stargazers. Like I write my soul into meshes instead of collisions. Like I write the world into a galaxy instead of grief. Thank you.
You're so amazing. My internet's going out, but I'm like, woo!
That was pretty phenomenal,
So
MP. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
We've got some really great comments. Everyone.
Yeah, I'm gonna bring Reagan and Sam as well. Hello.
Perfect.
Yay,
Yeah. Everyone is just loving on you today, MP. And Reagan and Sam as well.
Yeah,
right.
okay. I can put some of these comments up here that you can love from this and know who's there.
Mm-hmm. Oh, it sounds like we lost Candace for a minute there. So do our audience members, our viewers, have any questions for our three poets today? If you do, feel free to pop them in the chat. Otherwise, we can have our poets talk about their process a little, if you'd like to hear about that. So we'll hang here for a sec, and then we can start with MP if they would like to talk about their poetry a bit. And I mean, you mentioned writing during a pandemic, and this is your second chapbook to come out. So do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. I think with my first chapbook, it was very about I moved home during the like first shutdown stage of the pandemic and was living with my parents in my childhood bedroom. And the chapbook that I wrote like during that time was very much about those things, about family and hometown and the kind of weirdness of the place that I'm from, and all of these childhood experiences and things like that. And then this one is more about, I mean, it talks a little bit about the pandemic itself and also just kind of the chaos that was especially happening last fall when the pandemic converged with the presidential election and getting more into like January and the attack on the Capitol and all of these things that just made me feel so small in the face of current events. And I think there's a similar feeling of feeling small when you think about everything that is out in space. And so I think the two just really converged for this one. And ironically, the pandemic, as hard as it's been, especially being high risk and not being able to really ever go back to normal yet, it really has like opened up time. And for me, it's been very cathartic to kind of write through the pandemic.
Awesome. Thank you. Sam, do you want to talk about sort of your process and the pandemic, or just your process?
Yeah, process is always so hard. But I also released both of my chapbooks in the pandemic too, so that was weird. It's less of a public thing and it's more of like a private celebration, I guess. Even though like we have the internet and stuff. But yeah, one of the books was just a lot of work I had collected from undergrad, Coffee Nut Planets. And then I submitted that manuscript like 31 times and it got rejected so many times. And then I submitted it to Vegetarian Alcoholic Press and Freddie loved it. And then my other manuscript, it was just writing into an obsession over and over, just keeping up writing into what I was passionate about and what I couldn't stop thinking about, which was BoJack Horseman. And again, like publishing that, really weird. I submitted that the first time and it was immediately accepted. So it's just really, you're throwing something in the air and hoping like someone catches it, is what it feels like sometimes.
And Reagan, if you want to talk to us about your process in writing in a pandemic and publishing in a pandemic. Did you publish in a pandemic or no?
Individual poems, but not the book. So the full length collection's coming out in May of next year. But my chapbook came out in 2016. So yeah, actually, to come to think of it, the thing that I've been writing the thing that I've been actually working on drafting during the pandemic is my memoir. So, and it was a really productive time. And I'm one of those types of writers who maybe like other people, maybe not, I don't know. But like the chaos is kind of like, okay, I can write now. Like when things are calm, I'm like, oh, I just want to go out and like enjoy life, right? But like when it's chaos, I'm like, oh, I got to get in here. So, yeah, I don't know if that's how it is for other people, but that's how it's worked for me. I don't know if that truly speaks to process, but it speaks to the pandemic
anyway. Wonderful. Thank you so much. Does anyone in our audience have questions? Post them in the chat or in the comments.
Candace? I haven't seen any questions yet. Hopefully you can hear me. My head is just super on the fritz. Now tethered computer. So that's where we're at. But poetry is so hard, I think, to write. It's one of the hardest forms reading. So I'm wondering, got you to writing me? Could y'all hear that?
I think the question, if I, it was kind of breaking up, but I think it's how we got into writing poetry. I think.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. And then after that question, we have a question from one of our audience members. Okay, MP, do you want to answer Candace's question first?
Yeah, sure.
Sorry, I was just hoping someone would. Radio silence.
Yeah, so I started writing poetry just kind of casually in high school. I had an English teacher who was very, who taught a lot of poetry in his class, and he introduced us to some really great poems that stuck with me and made me think, like I wanna write in this genre. I want to write like this. And then in college, I started kind of getting more serious about it and like submitting to lit mags and also like seeking out workshops and stuff to actually like figure out like the craft side of what I was doing.
Awesome. Sam, go for it. Beautiful cat, by the way.
Thank you. She never wants me to love her unless like she can see that I'm on camera. But yeah, my story is pretty much the same as MP's. It started as like an emotional outlet in like middle school, high school. You know, we all had like that teenage angst. But yeah, I just started to follow up with like the craft and learn more about it and seek out workshops in undergraduate when my professor was like, hey, maybe you should consider this as a possible career. I was like, no way. And then I did, and it's worked out pretty well. So
Great. That's awesome. Reagan.
Sure. I guess my angst started earlier because my first poem was technically in the 7th grade, but it was because my grandmother died. So, I mean, you know. But I actually started off in undergrad in fiction, and I found myself telling a lot of stories that were more like truths, like names changed. And I was also in an intro poetry workshop, and one of the poems that we read was Louise Gluck's Mock Orange. And that poem for me was kind of like a light bulb going off. She says some things in the poem that I never heard anybody really say that way, especially a woman. She speaks with so much authority, and something just kind of clicked inside me where I realized, like, oh, okay, if I want to say what I want to say and I want to do it with authority, I think poetry might be the right place for me. And so that's kind of where I headed.
Excellent. We have a question for MP from, and I'm so sorry, I'm going to mispronounce your name. Oh no, we lost Candace. Anirudh, any risks taken with this chapbook for MP?
I'm definitely writing like directly about like COVID in this chapbook. And when I first like went from individual poems to like putting these all together as a manuscript, I was kind of worried that like presses wouldn't actually want a COVID chapbook. Because I mean, on one hand, I kind of get it. Like, who wants to actually think about like what's going on with the pandemic? That's a little depressing. So that I think was a little bit of a risk. But I'm glad I took it. I think a lot of the poems that do directly address COVID are actually some of my favorites. So
That's definitely, that sounds maybe not risky, just taking on like an emotional load, that kind of risk. Yeah, for sure. This question from Ezra. MP, you killed it. I do have a question. Which of the poems in your chapbook was the hardest to complete?
the title poem, there's a poem in here called The Truth About the Sky. And I had like the concept of what I wanted it to say in my head for a while, but I could not get like the actual language right for a while. So that one was probably the hardest.
And then this is a general question. We'll start with Reagan this time for all of the poets. From Chris, what kind of music gets your creative juices flowing?
So Chris is my sister, and I'm fairly certain that she's just trying to get me to talk about the Killers with that question, which is my favorite band. But no, actually, it's kind of strange because music for me is something completely separate. It's like I can't write when I hear other words, like other people's words. I can't focus on my own. It's just like too much like cross stuff going on. So I actually have to work almost always in silence, or just like like if it's going to be voices, it's got to be voices where I can't understand like what they're actually saying. So I was probably the worst person to answer that question, but that's okay. And thanks, Kiki, for asking.
Sam.
What kind of music gets my creative juices flowing? I think I'm kind of in the same boat as Reagan, but it really depends on the mood. Sometimes it's like Phoebe Bridgers. One thing I really love doing with music a while ago was write golden shovels with music lyrics. So where the last word of each line makes like a song lyric. I did that with a lot of Lorde, a lot of Lana Del Rey poems or music. And that was really inspiring and good work to do, I think.
And then MP.
Yeah, I'm kind of similar. Hearing where lyrics gets in my head, and it's hard to write. But I like classical. I like old ragtime music from like the 30s, and we'll write to that, which I know is a little weird, but it works.
Very cool. I just want to share really quick a little tangential story from my childhood. When I was in 7th grade, we had a poetry unit in English, and one of the students came in with an original poem that was the lyrics to oh gosh, Live, their famous song Lightning Strikes,
Lightning
His Mother Dies,
Yes.
that one. And she came in and was like, so this is an original poem that I wrote. And the teacher listens to the rock station and knew who the band was and knew the song. And I was like, but that got me thinking about music and poetry together at the young age of 12, that how they go kind of hand in hand. So I actually think that was a really great question from Chris, because even though the student got in a lot of trouble for plagiarism, it made a good point, and the teacher actually used it in class for the poetry unit. Like, yeah, there are a lot of things that you might not consider poetry at 12, that you might not consider poetry, but yeah.
You know, and I think too with songs, just generally, there's usually a form, right? I mean, we talk about sonnets and villanelles and, you know, ghazals and all the different forms in poetry, but a lot of poems actually have their own, if they're rhyming, or a lot of songs, I should say, have some kind of rhyming or even syllabic structure. Something that I kind of like, for whatever reason, I circle back to often is Train's song "Meet Virginia." If you look at the way that the end rhymes work, and how some of the words at the end rhymes are actually they're complete. It's the same word. It's an interesting kind of I guess sort of like extra emphasis when Train does that in that particular song. And I guess what I'm saying is I think there is something to be learned from it, and I feel like I maybe absorb it, but when I'm actually writing, I no music. So that's
Excellent. Well, we are coming down towards the last few minutes. If anyone else has any questions, please feel free to post them. I would like to say a very hearty congratulations to MP on their new chapbook. Congratulations. So exciting. And very hearty congratulations to both Sam and Reagan, who have published and or have forthcoming chapbooks and books as well. Good luck with your memoir, Reagan.
18 chapters in.
And Candace is messaging and saying, yay, MP and Sam and Reagan. And thank you so much to everyone who came today. Just checking the comments, and everyone saying huzzah and yay and yay. And thank you so much for joining us today. And oh, Candace might join us for the very last few minutes. There they are. Hello, Candace. Thanks everyone for coming. And thanks to our poets for writing such wonderful, delicious words. And Candace, do you want to add anything, or?
So I'm not sure that you hear me, but this was amazing. Sorry, I couldn't be present because it was so great to hear all of you read. And congratulations, MP, because we are celebrating you for sure. And Kim and Reagan, really awesome. And I'm glad I got to be a part of it. Thank you. And thanks everyone for watching.
Oh no. Okay, thank you everyone for coming today. And we'll see you next time for more poetry and good stories. Thanks everyone.